What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of SEC State of Mind. I'm Taylor Davis, joined as always by the man, the myth, the legend, J-Cam17, all the nicknames, Jason Campbell. Welcome in, everyone. What a week it has been. I feel like that's how I intro every single episode because it remains to be true in the SEC. This season has been insanity, and week 7 fits into that category as well. So we've got a jam-packed show. We're going to try and touch on all the big topics coming out of SEC, and it's the midway point, week 7. This is once again a 14-week regular season, so officially halfway through the regular season. So we're going to get a pulse check kind of on college football in general, what's going on in the SEC and around it as well. Give you our thoughts on week 7, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I'm not just talking about in Jordan Hare, and of course give you our week 8 previews. So we welcome you in. We thank you so much for joining us on SEC State of Mind, presented by Fanduel. Before we get into our Week 7 recaps, we're going to shuffle this a little bit. We are going to start with our tradition, our 2 weekly awards that we hand out. Kind of gets us going with our hot takes, and we can kind of steer appropriately. So we are going to start with SEC Standout this week, and I'm going to let my co-host J-Cam go first, kind of give us his overall take of what caught his eye in week 7 and who stood out in his mind in the SEC. What up, J-Cam?
What's happening, family? I hope everybody had a great weekend. It was a lot of great games, a lot of controversy. It continues, not just in Jordan Hare, a little bit down in Baton Rouge as well. But needless to say, though, Taylor, let me say this first before I get my SEC standout.
Okay.
Is I know the refs have a hard job, and they got to call things within a split second, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you do have review for most of these calls, and you have an opportunity to get it right. And it's not just the refs on the field. Birmingham has an opportunity to get it right because they're the ones in communication with the refs on the field for the SEC games.
Correct.
Now, with that being said, we as well have to understand that you can't control once a call is made. We got to have the accountability to say, let's just move on, and have accountability to finish. And that goes for like all SEC teams and everything, because you can let something just continue to snowball if you don't get off of it and move on. And you got to have that short-term memory. Now, my SEC standout of the year, of the week.
He couldn't help himself. He had to go there first.
It's just a little boiling. It's still boiling a little bit from Saturday.
We'll get into it.
We'll get to it in a little bit. But I'll say I'm going to go with the tight end from LSU.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going with Trey Dez Green, 6'7". This guy had 8 catches for 119 yards in the big game over South Carolina this weekend. And I can always go with Ty Simpson, the quarterback, right? But sometimes you got to spread love to guys that may not get a lot of attention. And when they do very well, let's spread the love.
I like it. Trey Dez Green was a guy, I had LSU's bowl game last year, and that was a guy that the coaching staff was really telling us he's going to be a problem. He's a matchup problem for anybody. Like you said, 6'7". It's just a matter of him kind of finding his own. So I like that. I like that a lot. I am going to give my SEC standout. Ty Simpson would have been a good one, I got to be honest. But he did have a couple misses that I think he would like to have back. I am giving my SEC standout to Alabama's defense, because here on this show, we are very high on Ahmad Hardy and what he's been able to do. This was his first game under 100 yards. My guy's put up 200 yards in a game. He has been running over everyone. And I've talked about Kane Womack and their in-game adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. You saw it in the Vanderbilt game. You saw it in the Georgia game. What they did and the game plan that they had against a Missouri rushing attack that has been dominant really, really impressed me. They were on the road. That game was close. That game was tight. They knew they had to take Ahmad Hardy away to win that game, and it's exactly what they did. So I really think Kane Womack and the Alabama defense are my SEC standout for the week. Where there's good, there's bad. And there was some bad to discuss. So we switch gears a little bit here to SEC Siren. Again, it's not the panic button. It's not the alarm. We're not calling for the heads here, but we're hitting the siren. They need to kind of fine tune it. They need to fix it. Who are you giving that warning sign to coming out of week 7, Jay?
Oh man, I could go two ways with this one.
Oh dear.
I could go South Carolina. Like offensively, you get into LSU's territory 6 times, and 4 times you come away with no points.
Yep.
I could go Auburn, and I think I'm going to go Auburn
Okay.
because I think for 3 weeks in a row, we had an opportunity to put up some points, and we missed open throws that can be touchdowns, that are points that's taken off the board. We can't get out our own way when we have whether it's a turnover or turnover on downs, we don't seem to pick it back up. We
Nope.
seem to get stuck, and I'm just waiting for somebody to take the bull by the horn and just say, "Hey guys, let's make it happen."
Yeah.
Like somebody make the throw, somebody make the catch, somebody make the block, somebody make the run. Like when something is spiraling a little bit, somebody got to make a play.
Mhm.
And I'm just waiting for that to happen for this offense. Who's going to be that leader to just emerge and get it done? So I say Auburn's offense this week. I think they got to show up and play 4 quarters. We saw it for a half against Georgia. We saw it for a little bit of a half against Oklahoma. We didn't see it at all against A&M. And I just feel like, with the talent and everything that we're having, how can we get to the next step? But it bothers me is when something doesn't go right, we
Yeah.
seem to keep sinking and not find our way out of it.
There doesn't seem to be a winning mentality at Auburn. And you hate that because you hope that the years of issues don't continue to add on. But I think when you're in those real testing moments, which is what that was at halftime, you can respond one of 2 ways. You can retreat and respond like a victim, or you can rise up and respond like a winner. And you saw which way it went in the second half. 40 yards of offense in an entire half. You were up a touchdown in your house, a ridiculous environment, and you can't generate more than 40 yards of offense. Like that to me, it starts with mentality, and they had 2 options at halftime, and I really hated what they came out with in the second half. We're going to break that one down in just a little bit as well. It's ironic because your 2 options, one of which was mine. I'm going a little more specific though. My SEC Siren is Mike Shula. I will be very surprised if he is retained as South Carolina's offensive coordinator and remains in that position by the end of season. I feel like a move could be made. They've already fired their offensive line coach. I don't think Mike Shula is the right fit. And I'm really eating my words there because I kind of thought his creativity, because you've seen some of that in his tenure over however many years he's been doing this, matched with Shane Beamer, and we know him as Beamer Ball, and they will do the trick plays and the fake punts. And Lenore Sellers kind of really tapping into his own and establishing some real confidence last year. I had high hopes for it, and I think it's the absolute opposite. I think is the absolute wrong fit, and it has not seemed like there is any rhythm to their offensive approach. And I'm not a non-believer in Lenore Sellers. I still think that guy is so talented and good. I do not think they're giving him the right ammo. And so I think that Mike Shula, if they don't pull a rabbit out of a hat in the next few weeks, I don't think he is kept in Columbia through the end of season. So those are our sirens and standouts. It's the perfect transition. If you're watching on YouTube, drop in the comment who your standouts and sirens are. I'm very curious kind of fan takes right now, because the SEC really feels like it's anyone's game at this point, but there's also definitely some bottom dwellers and some real problems that programs are struggling to overcome. So make sure you interact with us in the comments. Let's touch on a few of the big games coming out of week 7, and we got to start with Georgia Auburn. You've already kind of alluded to some of the issues in the officiating and some of the calls that were heard around the world. Basically, the goal line punch out. Was it a touchdown? Was it not? Right there before the half. Kirby has never learned how to clap, apparently, because they look like timeout signals. But that one also has a layer to it because if you read his lips, it does look like he's saying they're clapping. So it's so much of that game was so confusing. I've been doing this for a long time. I haven't seen a game that had that many just true head scratchers where you're so unsure what anyone is seeing. So there was a lot to overcome, but I think that that's the truth of it, right? The officiating can be a problem, sure, but the truth is that Auburn is not mature enough or mentally tough enough to overcome things like that. And you have to be at this point. We're in year 3 under this coaching regime. I I feared they still missed at the quarterback position. And I don't say that to be a slight to Jackson Arnold, but you have ridiculous weapons on the offensive side of the ball and you are missing them. You are overshooting them. You are not making proper decisions. You are holding on to the ball too long for an offensive front that's still trying to find their footing. There is not enough maturity or mental fortitude to overcome some of the insanity when it comes to officiating. Hats off to Georgia. I mean, I guess they came out and kind of put the foot to the gas in the second half, ultimately walking away with a 20-10 win. You feel like they had a little bit of help, but at the end of the day, I said the same thing when they went into Knoxville. They never believe they're out of it. There is a mental toughness that is developed in that Georgia team. Kirby is very good at the psychology piece of this thing. Love him, hate him, indifferent about it. It's the truth. And Georgia, in a very fired up Jordan Hare, never quit and never lost the edge that they were going to walk out with the win. And Auburn went out in the second half feeling like they knew what the result was going to be. And I think that that's ultimately what was on display. But you were boots on the ground, obviously. Touch on some of the Auburn issues, but also what'd you see from Georgia? Are they a playoff contender?
Yeah, when I think about Georgia, are they a playoff team? I guess you have to say yes, right? Because they fought back in the Tennessee game. They got down, came back and won. They got down in the Alabama game 14-0. They fought all the way back to 24-28. And had they taken a field goal earlier in that game in the second half, then they would have only needed a field goal to win the game. And then you talk about then they come to Jordan Hare, which is a hostile environment, a huge rival game. And you get down 10-0, which you're about to go down 17-0 before the controversy, touchdown, not a touchdown happened, right? So, but you didn't flinch after that. Like you at that point in time, you became the hammer and you kept going. And I think that's the sign of a playoff team, right? You
Yeah.
have that mental toughness to keep going. And even when even when it looks like it's not going your way. Now, the whole thing to me is when you get to the calls in the game, right? A lot of Auburn people have been calling in shows and saying, we feel like we're under attack,
Mhm.
by the refs and everything. Okay, Auburn could easily be 5-1 right now if you think the Oklahoma game and definitely the Georgia game. I thought A&M might have been the only game we got outplayed
Sure.
and everything. So I feel like we could be 5-1, but at the same time, you got to be willing to hold accountability. As a quarterback, my number one job is I have to hold on to the football at all costs on the goal line
Mhm.
because guys are going to be punching at the ball, guys are going to be trying to get the ball out. And you saw it happening against Jacksonville Jaguars a couple of weeks ago against Kansas City.
True.
Trevor Lawrence tried to go over top. They was ready to punch the ball out. So guys on the defense have been taught now, hey, if the quarterback goes over top, to punch at the ball. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. Whether the point of the ball, the tip of the ball was touching the goal line plane, which is a touchdown, but you left it up to the refs because we weren't able to hold on to the ball and it
True.
went opposite against us. So that's tough, but that can kill momentum in teams like Auburn. Why? Because Taylor, you just said it earlier. Auburn has not learned how to win over the last couple of years. So when
Exactly.
something bad happens like that and it rips your momentum, you don't have enough guys on that team that have been winning to understand, like, hey, snap out of it, let's go. Because you still had them backed up on the half-inch yard line, and they still went 88 yards and got a field goal out of it and went in halftime feeling good. And
Right.
not just that, you come into the second half, and now all of a sudden Georgia goes for it at midfield on fourth down. And Georgia doesn't get it, which leaves you the ball now at midfield where you can take it and go get a touchdown or a field goal. So you can take the momentum right back because they
Yep.
just give you a gift. But because your mindset psychologically between the ears, you're still thinking about that play that happened before halftime, you haven't moved on.
Yep.
Now, I give it to them. They made a great call on 4th and 2 to have an opportunity to continue that drive. Jackson Arnold got to make the throw.
Yep.
You got to make the throw between you and the tight end and give him a chance just to turn up field and get the first down. We had other opportunities. When you think, I know I say we guys, I call games for Auburn, but when you think
He's earned that right, okay? He wore the jersey better than most. Go off.
when you think about Auburn, Eric Singleton running down the middle of the field, it's 13-10. If
Yeah.
Eric Singleton is able to be hit in strides, like that's either
Just
a
off
huge
the
play,
tips.
but it's probably a touchdown because he's 10 yards away from the guy that was holding him.
Yep.
And he's 10 yards away from the other safety. And as fast as he is, that's a touchdown. So you're about
Mhm.
to make it a 17-13 game at that point, even after you didn't get the 4th and 2.
Yep.
So the plays were there still after that to go and win the game, but we're missing them, and we're missing them way too often in critical situations. And if you ask Jackson, he would tell you, yes, I got to be better in hitting the plays that count, especially in the critical situations. Now,
Right.
defensively, guys play hard. They kept us in almost every game. But this thing is about learning how to win games and not continuing how to give them away. And I think
Yeah.
Auburn needs a big win, and it's a young football team, but you have veterans in key positions. And so something's got to start changing. The momentum's got to get going. And hopefully, the guys start taking some accountability this week and don't look at the refs. No, you got to hold accountability and you got to finish.
100%. 100%. Because at the end of the day, you can overcome bad officiating eventually. And so that can't be part of it. But yeah, I think that Georgia, certainly has a avenue to the playoff, but it's going to include getting through Ole Miss this weekend, which is a very intriguing matchup, especially because what the heck did Ole Miss do this past weekend, almost losing to Washington State? We'll get into the previews for this upcoming weekend, but I said I wasn't going to do this, but I got to do it. What was the deal with the timeout? Like,
I want to
the
cover. I'll let you go first.
the hand, this is where I'm torn because his answer was that he had been telling the refs that Auburn's defensive players were clapping, which is a penalty, trying to get the offense to false start. When you slow down the video and watch it, it looks like his mouth is saying they're clapping. Like it looks like that's what he's saying. It's more syllables than timeout. But his hand is so clearly doing this. So were you calling a timeout to point out that they were clapping? Was that the reason for your timeout? But still, you were calling a timeout to not be charged the timeout. I am baffled. Please give me your take.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very frustrating. Even at the game they showed on the Jumbotron, he's clearly running to the refs doing this.
Yes.
Like in a stadium, it's loud. They're on offense. It's very loud. So he can say clapping all day long. He was doing this to the refs, and the play clock was down to 2 seconds.
Right.
So at that point in time, if the play clock's at 2 seconds, and then I've heard them come out and say, oh, they would have got the playoff. No, you wouldn't. Watch the game. The offensive lineman was still standing up in their stance, and Gunnar Stockton was clapping hard, trying to get them to get down in their stance. So there's no way you're gonna get the ball off in time.
Yeah.
So the refs did neither. So one, you should have granted them a timeout because he called timeout, whether he said he was clapping or not. Your action said timeout.
Mhm.
And as a ref, you're not going to hear him saying clapping anyways. You're looking at him signaling timeout.
Yeah.
So that should have been granted. Okay, if you're not going to grant them the timeout and you're going to put the offense back on the field, you can't reset the play clock. You
Yes.
have to you have to say it was at 1 second. So at that point in time, they weren't going to get the playoff. So it's a delay of game against Georgia. So
Yep.
instead of being 3rd and 9, it should have been 3rd and 14. Okay, if you're going to say Auburn was clapping after the fact, then there should have been a 5-yard penalty delay of game against Auburn.
Correct.
You didn't call that. And then the worst thing is you did neither of them.
You did
didn't
none of the options.
nothing of the options. And everything just moved on as normal.
Like,
And they stopped the play twice in the game where the ball had already been snapped, and then they blew the whistle to stop play and go review something.
yep.
So they got to get their stuff together and everything. Like I said, you have a hard job, but you are costing people jobs.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like what you call on the football field dictates wins and losses, which ultimately puts people's jobs in question. So
Correct.
it has to be done better. And my thing is, Okay, every weekend you get the accountability where you're on the phone and somebody says, "Okay, we saw it, we messed up, we made a mistake." That's not accountability.
No, it also
Like,
doesn't do
what's the
anything
what's
for
the
the
what's the
result.
punishment? Like, a ref need to be suspended for a game, or he
Mhm.
needs to like something needs to be done. You either suspend it or fine. You can't keep making the same things happen over and over and over. And yes, Auburn's not. You still got to come back and fight through that. But at the end of the day, this is happening way too often and too much.
For sure.
And something needs to be done, not just an apology. That does
Mhm.
nothing. Like, it needs to be done to the point where they think about what they're doing, because there's too many reviews that you can go and look at stuff and you still get the calls wrong or whatever. Like, something's got to be done because it just doesn't look right.
Yeah, no repercussions for things like that. Even in the Oklahoma game, like, thank you so much for the apology statement from the conference. What freaking good does it do when Oklahoma left with a one touchdown win? That ref was not suspended. Their offensive coordinator, who drew that crap up knowing it was a penalty and got away with it, doesn't get fined. Kirby, to my knowledge, hasn't been fined for the lying about a timeout. Also, the referees were conferencing with Kirby a lot, asking him what he wanted. It felt weird. And I don't play into conspiracy theories. I am on the sidelines of way too many football games where a bunch of crap goes on. And I realize that that's the nature of the game. This one was icky. Like, it just felt different. So I hate it. And they're gonna have to tighten up on it. Who's also gonna have to tighten up apparently is Oklahoma. I gotta give it to you, Jay. I gotta give it to you. You called this one. I was very, very firm that Oklahoma was going to pull this one out, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. It's only happened like twice in my life, but I'll admit it. Texas gets the win. My mother is listening and laughing hysterically at that because I'm wrong all the freaking time. But anyway, I try. Texas defeats Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry 23-6. Arguably the wrong decision to let John Mateer go just
Mm,
17 days after his hand surgery,
mm,
3 interceptions. And that is not this kid's game, but he didn't have the zip on the ball. He didn't have the accuracy. How can you expect him to when you literally were having something done internally on your throwing hand 2.5 weeks ago? Just 48 rushing yards. Texas's defense, man, they came out with a vengeance. 5 sacks. Those 3 interceptions obviously held OU to just 2 field goals on the day, coming off a loss to Florida. And if this just isn't the best example of how open the SEC is right now, I mean, everybody just beating up on each other for no rhyme or reason. But it does start to put a little pressure on Oklahoma, who definitely has big aspirations. They've got South Carolina this weekend. You don't expect Mateer's going to go. You think they're going to try and save him for some of the bigger ones in a couple of weeks, but I didn't know that he was going to go this past weekend, and he did it anyway. So, what were your takeaways from that game, real quickly? Is Texas figuring it out, or was this just a really off day for Oklahoma, or is Oklahoma even that good? I'm still questioning that, to be honest.
Oklahoma's a talented defense.
Facts.
Offensively, John Mateer does some really good things, scrambling and making plays happen, once things break down.
Hmm.
But just playing them a couple of weeks ago and then watching some of their games, there are holes in their offense
For sure.
that if you have a really good defense, you can get to them. And that's what happened in this game. Texas came out there, they decided to stop the run, and they forced John Mateer and then Oklahoma offense to be one dimensional.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing was the interception before half. That's the one that John Mateer got to understand, like, okay, I don't have it. Let me throw it away. At least give us 3 points.
Right.
And he ended up throwing that interception right before half. And then, you know, Arch Manning was 21 for 26, 166 yards.
Hmm.
So they played control ball with him. Like, they
Yeah.
had him in the run game. They ran a lot of RPOs, a lot of keeps, but easy passes to give him confidence and say, hey, we're going to lean towards our defense today
Yeah.
because we feel like we can get out there offense. Was it the right decision for John Mateer to play in that game? I don't know. Like, only he knows how his hand really was feeling.
Hmm.
And he had to communicate with the doctors to allow him to play in that game. But throwing the ball is one thing, but decision making is another.
Yep.
Like, he threw the ball in some traffic a couple of times. That has nothing to do with your hand. That's just
Facts.
decision making. So, I just think as a whole, this was a wake up call for Oklahoma. And
Yeah.
we said this though, Taylor, there was not going to be any team in the SEC that's probably going to have less than 2 losses. And Alabama's trending good, but they still got a schedule. And you
Yeah.
look at A&M, they still have a
A&M too, I was going to ask.
so this thing is far from over for a lot of teams,
Yeah.
but teams are starting to separate themselves a little bit though. You are starting to see that.
The meat and the potatoes. I was waiting on you to say that one. No, it's true. And at this point, they have to because you are starting to get into the point where your resume has to be strong. You have to be making statements to the committee because, to your point, I think that so many of these are going to maybe statistically be pretty comparable. And so, who you're beating, how you're beating them, where you were, road or home, all of those things start coming into play. We're heading into week 8. The committee's going to utilize all of this as evidentiary support for their decisions a few weeks from now. So it's a good point. I'll be curious to see how Oklahoma responds against South Carolina this weekend. A big one for Alabama was defeating Missouri, like we've touched on, 27-24. Bo Pribula had an uncharacteristic day, 2 interceptions for him. I'll tell you though, out the gate, that first drive they put together, I was like, dang, man, Missouri may do this. They looked sharp. They looked efficient. But Alabama's defense just adjusted and had answers. And Ty Simpson is really becoming one of my favorite players in college football, like on and off the field. This guy, like, he just doesn't care about the noise. We've talked about his leadership. You've seen examples of him on the sidelines with Ryan Williams after a bad play, and how he goes to Kalen DeBoer and constantly wants coaching. He loves the Lord. He's public about his faith. Like, this guy is so, it's hard not to root for him. You know what I mean? And they definitely got a big one in Columbia, and they've got a big one this weekend. We're going to turn to predictions here in just a little bit, but you're not giving up on Missouri at this point. And obviously they come into Jordan Hare, so that makes it a little bit tough, but they still have the talent. Like, you could see it. And hey, they were challenging down to the very end against a team that I think a lot of people are picking to win the championship. Like, I don't think you give up on Missouri at this point.
Oh, no way. Not at all. You think about it also in that game, I think they went for it on a 4th down play late in the game that they probably shouldn't have at that point in time. But it's still a 34-31 ball game. And, they're traveling down to try to tie the game or win it. And I see what both of you saw, but you had a seam and you had a stop on the outside. Once you see the nickel guy, the star position, carrying the seam and the safety over top, then your eyes got to immediately take you outside to throw the stop route for your receiver to catch and get out of bounds. So at that time, you still have about 50 seconds on the clock. So now you have everything at your arsenal. If you complete that pass, he gets out of bounds. Now you can take shots to the end zone before settling for the field goal. So that was a tough one for Missouri right there. But when you think about this team as a whole, this team defensive front is really good.
Yeah.
Like, Missouri has a good defensive front. Alabama, of course, Miller had a good rushing game before he had to leave with 10 minutes left in the game. But like you said, the difference is Ty Simpson, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. He threw the 1 interception and didn't flinch.
Yeah.
This guy is a pro. Like, he stands in the pocket. I see him going to the sideline. If something's not going right, he's getting his guys together. He's yapping at guys, to go. Like, that's leadership. What I'm saying? That's what it takes. And he hasn't been a guy that's played a lot of years. Look, this is his first full year starting.
Yep.
But he's a guy that understands the game. You can tell he's been doing studying ever since the Florida State game. He's just been ascending. And he's probably playing the best of anybody at the position right now in college football. And some of the throws that he make when the game's on the line, 4th and 8, he makes a great throw. Like, just throw out the throw. He pinpoint accuracy. That's the key. That's the difference between winning and losing. Is you got a quarterback that can have pinpoint accuracy. Like, the difference between a big play and coming back, scratching your head, that's the difference. And I just think Ty Simpson's playing at a high level. So overall, Missouri is a really good football team. Auburn's got to be careful this week because they coming in hungry. Auburn's hungry. But this is a team that's definitely not out of it by no means.
No, I agree with you. And honestly, it may be a really bad thing for Auburn that Missouri just got that loss because they know the margin for error shrunk. It's the same thing with Georgia. Auburn has Georgia after the Alabama loss. Well, great. Now Georgia's realizing we can't miss another one. And Missouri knows too, a loss to Alabama could be excused by the committee and be, okay. A loss to an unranked Auburn, perhaps not. So you do have a different approach to it. But I still really like this Missouri team, and I totally agree with you about Ty Simpson. I mean, I've been high on Dante Moore, but man, I did not see that result coming. Indiana getting the win over Oregon this past weekend. That was crazy. But that's college football for you. A couple other notables in the SEC before we look ahead and get you ready for week 8. Tennessee narrowly defeated Arkansas 34-31 in Bobby Petrino's first game as head coach. That one's always tricky and weird, but I really didn't think it was going to be that close. Arkansas really gave them a run, but Tennessee got away with the win. Texas A&M defeats Florida comfortably 34-17. LSU defeats South Carolina 20-10. One that also felt like could have been South Carolina's. There were so many opportunities. LSU turned it over 3 times within the 5-yard line against South Carolina. I'm sorry, they turned it over twice. Whatever. More than 0 is too many, all right? Ole Miss narrowly defeated Washington State 24-21. Washington State was a 33-point underdog, so make that one make sense. It felt like a really weird trap game, and it was very close to being that. And Ole Miss needs to be careful with ones like that. Last year, the reason they weren't in the playoff, but it's because of 2 unranked losses. They won the big games and then let Kentucky get them and knock them out of the playoffs. So those are some interesting ones. We're at the midway point, like I said, of regular season, Jay. Obviously, a lot to still see, and teams are honestly going to knock each other out. But at this point, what you've seen so far, the resumes teams have put together, the wins and losses they've accumulated, who is leading the pack in the SEC at this point, closing out week 7?
Ooh, I'll say this. Alabama is leading the pack because of the quarterback situation.
Agreed.
Like this guy's a leader. He doesn't get flustered. And they responded. Like they probably been the best team in college football since week 1 debacle at Florida State. They turned things around. Now, like A&M as well, defensively, now their offense is starting to pick it up a little more. They put up points against Florida defense that's known to be a really elite defense. Yeah. So those 2 teams to me right now are the 2 teams that are sitting at the top. If I had to choose one, it's hard to say, but I would have to say it's Alabama.
Me too. And you know why? Because they've done it. You just that goes back to the winning mentality piece and that equipping guys to never feel like they're out of it. I think I said this on our podcast. I know I've said it on others. It does feel like this could be Notre Dame's Northern Illinois, where the loss made absolutely no sense. It made you scratch your head. It embarrassed the guys, but it's the very thing that sent them into the postseason. Guys had the final score as screensavers on their phones. It was the driving force. This feels eerily similar, like that loss to Florida State, because Florida State hadn't gone on to do what anyone expected them to. They're 0-3 in ACC play. They're coming off a loss to Pitt. I'm actually covering them this weekend as they go to Stanford and play another ACC game. They haven't had a conference win in over a year. Like it's confusing that was Alabama's loss, but it does feel like they're putting it together, and it's what they do. Alabama plays for postseason. They play for championships. So it's hard to think that they're not the SEC's best bet at this point, but I am a believer in A&M, and I think that they've got the firepower to do it. Also, what's been interesting at this point, we'll touch on this real briefly, a lot of coaching changes or a lot of coaching decisions have already been made. Penn State pulls the plug on James Franklin. They were in the playoff last year. Like that 2 weeks ago, they've got an overtime game, and we're talking about game days there. We're talking about them as a playoff team. Drew Aller, a potential Heisman. How quickly things can turn. And I get it. His record in the ranked games, in the big games, it wasn't good, and it wasn't getting them to where they want to be, but it is, and also a $49 million buyout. Heller, but it is just another example of how quickly plugs can be pulled. And in the SEC, I am hard pressed to believe that we're not going to see at least one more by the time season is over. But I wanted your perspective on this because you have a very interesting take as both a former player and someone that is involved in the world of NIL and transfer portal and inner workings of a program. I think fans are so quick to think that firing a head coach is the quick fix and the immediate answer to their problems, but there are ripple effects, and there can be more things to overcome than just getting a certain coach out of the building, right?
Right. Well, the overall thing when you think about James Franklin is, like I say he was in the playoffs last year. They won 2 games in the playoffs, and of course, yes, he hasn't beat Ohio State. He didn't beat Oregon. He struggles against Michigan. So it's the big hitters that they have to get through, right? But he
Yeah,
did make the playoffs a year ago. Now, he lost some guys off of that team as well.
true.
And this year they played Oregon to the toe
Yep,
and lost that game right at the end. So that game, I think, is another example of letting something snowball. They
yep.
didn't put it behind them, and they kept thinking about that Oregon game, and it carried over to them losing 2 other games that they shouldn't have lost. There's
Mhm.
no way in the world they should have lost to UCLA, to an interim coach and a team that was just, in disarray.
Yeah,
And you can't lose this past weekend to Northwestern at home. Like, it just can't happen
I know.
because to whom much is given, much is
Much is
required.
required.
So you have to understand. But my thing with these ADs, though, if a guy's already on the fence, if you fire a guy within 1 year after giving him an extension,
Mhm.
then that means you was already before he got the extension wondering what you should do with it or not. So why
Preach.
give the extension and then you
Yes!
fire him so soon? And now the school is on the hook to pay $50 million,
Mhm.
but send someone on a $49.4 million vacation.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-mm.
Like, if I'm already on the cusp, like, do I extend the guy? Do I not? Then they always told me, if you don't know what to do nothing.
That's
Just
your
wait.
answer.
Yeah, just wait. Instead, they extended the guy because they worried about if somebody else gonna come and get him. If somebody else come and get him, so what then?
Yeah.
But you extended the guy, now you got to pay this guy a whole bunch of money to go sit. I just don't enjoy sending coaches home and just filling their bank accounts every month for underachieving. That's
Yeah.
really what happened. If you
Yep.
underachieve, but you're paying to underachieve, that's the only job in the world I know where you can underachieve and still get paid a whole bunch of money. Like, if you play professional sports, you better get cut, you
Yeah.
done. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's giving you the rest of your contract. You
Right.
know, if you get fired at your work job, they're not sending you another contract. It's deuces. See you later. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you're a coach and you was hired to compete for a championship and you don't, it doesn't matter. You still gonna get paid more during your buyout than you were while you was coaching.
It really is crazy.
How is that even legal?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so when it comes to, like, you know, athletes and stuff getting paid and all this type of stuff, okay, what's your argument then about the coaches then? If
Yeah.
they underachieve and they're still getting paid. So I didn't like them firing him the way he did. I just like,
Mhm.
look, he's had an outstanding year last year. This year they haven't recovered a little bit and everything. Let it be this year. See how they respond in that season. Don't go so fire happy, send the guy on because the fan base is getting all erupt and
Yeah.
everything. Now you set the school back. I guess financial is not a problem, but I
Apparently.
think they shouldn't have fired him as soon as they did.
It's interesting. It does make you think that they've gotta be clear on who they wanna go after, and they feel
Oh,
like
they
they've
already
gotta
got
get
the coach.
in
Yeah.
they feel like they've gotta get in the conversation quickly. And I mean, look, you've got UAB fired Trent Dilfer this past weekend as well. A couple other smaller, Kent State is open. UCLA is open. Oregon State is open. Arkansas is open. Stanford only hired Frank Reich as an interim head coach. So they are technically in the coaching hunt right now, even though they have a guy that isn't quote unquote on the hot seat. But he was only hired by general manager Andrew Luck to be the temporary fix because they fired Troy Taylor in March. So Stanford is open. And Florida, you think is probably going to be open by the end of this. Kentucky, question mark. Florida State, question mark. I mean, like, there's going to be more. And then whoever some of these, top tier brands, if Penn State goes and gets a Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame is open. If they go get a Brian Kelly, LSU is open. So it feels like this carousel is about to be a freaking Ferris wheel, not a carousel. There is more to come from this. It
And you
feels.
just said some key things, right? You just named
I
out some
tend to do that.
coaches that that are in place. You named out some coaches that are in place, And that's why I tell a lot of guys when they're trying to choose certain schools to go to,
Yeah.
you don't know if that coach, just because he's winning, he's going to stay there. Like,
Such a good point.
you know what I'm saying? Like he could still leave. Your position
Mhm.
coach could still leave and take a coordinator job or something. You can't just make your
Absolutely.
decisions solely on the people. Like,
Mhm.
you have to look at the overall school and what the overall, job is to make sure that this school is going to win. I was like,
Yes,
because you get caught up into that, you can't dictate that. I played for 4 different offensive coordinators every year.
exactly.
Like, I didn't sign up for that. I didn't know that was gonna happen. But I committed to the school and look, it ended up being a blessing. So
Worked out for you.
so the thing about all of this is there's gonna be some coaches that are current places that are doing great jobs. They're gonna be at another school next year.
Yeah,
There's gonna be some coaches that's gonna get fired and guys gonna get hired. And you have to be so careful. And I think ADs and presidents that are everywhere, if you're gonna fire a guy in the season, you better make sure you already got your guy
agreed.
because your players can now enter the portal for 30 days. And they can't go play for another team immediately, but they can enter the portal.
Mhm.
And if you don't already have a coach to tell them within 2 to 3 days who that coach is, and you lose your star players, now you not only rebuilding a staff, you rebuilding a roster. It
Yep.
used to be you just rebuild the staff.
Mhm.
Now you got to rebuild the roster because back in the day you couldn't transfer like that.
Right.
So guys just came in and knew what they had. You just sat there and waited to whoever they named the coach. So it's a different ball game. It's a lot to go into this. So not for 1 second, I don't think Penn State has already been on the phone and know who their guy is
Yeah.
before they made that decision. That's a big decision.
It is. You also gotta think Kurt Signetti is kind of on their radar. It'll be interesting. I love paying attention to all of this drama. That's what it is. It really is like a reality show at certain points of the season, and that's how it has felt in the past week. All right, we've got a huge slate of SEC matchups. Week 8, I believe I read this is the most SEC conference matchups in one weekend or something like that. I mean, it is a huge pivotal weekend for the SEC. So many that we can't do them all, and we had to just pick a few. I'll run through ones that we're not going to highlight, but are big matchups: Missouri, Auburn, Kentucky, Texas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, which I also think that one's going to be a sneaky good one because of variety of things at play in that one. And a couple coaches that you do feel like are coaching for their jobs at this point. So we'll see how all of those fare. But we are going to start with one of the biggest of the weekend. It'll be the biggest in the eyes of some. It's where College Game Day is headed. So that definitely makes you aware of where the landscape and the media and the College Football Playoff Committee is paying attention to. And that is Ole Miss, Georgia. Georgia exits Auburn and heads into one of the biggest matchups in the SEC. What you got for this one, Jay?
Yeah, Fanduel has Georgia at a 7.5 point favorite with over or under 53.5.
Hmm.
Ah, man, this game is going to be very intriguing. Like Ole Miss hadn't really been challenged on the road yet. They went to Kentucky, but they
Yeah,
really hadn't had to play in a hostile environment against a team. And I think for Ole Miss to make the playoffs, they have to win this game.
have to.
And I think for Georgia, defensively, I think they will hold Ole Miss to about 24.
Okay.
But Gunner Stockton them, they don't flinch. So I think Georgia gets this at home against Ole Miss.
They're also going to be very fired up considering what happened last year. They were irritated that they lost that one. And unfortunately, Ole Miss didn't do enough with it, turning around and losing to Kentucky and not even end up in the playoff. So you got to take it and run with it if you are able to get this one. I was very high on Ole Miss coming off the LSU game. I really felt like this is a team, especially offensively, that is going to test anybody. I don't know what the heck happened this past weekend against Washington State. It just didn't seem like everything that I had perceived in the LSU game was there, but you do wonder if games like that you just can't get these kids, these young men as fired up and as ready for it. Also, the attendance was terrible. Like Ole Miss fans, what are y'all doing? Things like that are going to send your head coach elsewhere. I'm just saying you need to help a little bit more than you are. I don't care about the opponent. Um, But anyway, yeah, I think that Georgia is going to come out very intense and test them more. Trinidad Chambliss, considering we expect he's going to stay at the quarterback position, even though it does seem like Austin Simmons is healthy. I don't know why you would change that again. This is going to be the toughest test that they won't. This is going to be a very tough test. Not that LSU wasn't, but playing between the hedges and this defense that's going to be all over the field will be very different. But 7.5 is a lot. I don't know if I'm taking that, but I do think that Georgia, listen to me. I think Georgia definitely has a lot they're bringing in. All right, we switch gears to what has always been a very big rivalry and definitely has some postseason implications on it as well. Tennessee, Alabama. FanDuel has Alabama as a 9.5-point favorite, over under 58.5. Tennessee coming off that narrow loss to Arkansas, 5 sacks and 3 turnovers versus them, though. They had 273 rushing yards. They averaged 7.3 yards per carry. So they are going to attack the ground. Josh Heupel loves the running game, even though Joey Aguilar has been fantastic. But Tennessee's 3 SEC games have been decided by a total of 13 points. They have been in so many close ones, some that are warranted, Georgia, some that don't make as much sense, Arkansas. They've allowed an average of 36 points. Like I said, the ground game has been effective, but Alabama's coming off a game where they held Ahmad Hardy to 52 yards, his first game under 100. So I think that Alabama's defense is going to be primed and ready to stop Tennessee's offensive attack and make it much more difficult for them to find some sort of rhythm. I do think they need to get Chris Brazzell going. Brazzell, however you pronounce his name. He's averaging 89.33 yards per game. I think he could have another big day through the air, so I would try and target him early. And then Deshaun Bishop, their running back at Tennessee, he left the game with an injury this past week after putting up 146 yards. Let's be clear, he still had a big day, but he did leave with injury, which would be very worrisome in this game. But Josh Heupel has already commented on it, said he expects him to be ready to go. But Alabama feels primed for this run. They've got 3 straight wins over ranked opponents. They've been tested a little bit. So I do think Alabama is going to go out with this win and probably beat Tennessee's tougher test, even though Georgia was a tough one for them as well. But keep that in mind. Tennessee got up on Georgia and really had them pushing. So if they can get off, if you can get Chris Brazzell going, you can get that defense getting after Ty Simpson. They have a couple guys with 4 sacks each. So like they can get after him and make it a little bit more difficult. But he just doesn't get frazzled. So I'm taking Bama.
Not so fast, my friend. As Lee Corso would say.
I love it.
Yeah, yes, Alabama's at home and all the people calling into the Fine Bum show and apologizing to the board, and he's done an outstanding job. Yes, you give credit where credit is due. He has done an outstanding job since the first game.
Yep.
But Tennessee's coming in and they want this one. The way they lost to Alabama last year, the way they gave the Georgia game away earlier this year.
True.
Tennessee needs this game for a statement. So Aguilar, Arugula, whatever you want to say his name is, hey, he's coming in there ready to mix up some spaghetti, and he's going to throw meatballs at this Alabama defense. So I'm just expecting Tennessee to come in, play hard, play fast. Vanderbilt should have had an opportunity to win that game.
Yeah.
Probably turned the ball over, twice inside the red zone?
Yeah.
So Tennessee's offense is better than Vandy's offense. Now, Vandy has a great defense. Tennessee's defensive line is pretty good.
Yeah.
But
their back end is
like Tennessee to come
You're
in.
picking Tennessee?
Hold on. I like Tennessee to come in here and beat the spread.
You are such a little thinker. Wow, I thought you were making a splash pick. All right, I'll take that. That is pretty good. All right, well, we also have Texas A&M versus Arkansas. Very interesting. It's A&M's first trip to Fayetteville since 2013 because they've played in Dallas for so long. So just another interesting one on that one. It's the first of 3 straight road games for Texas A&M. They have had that added cushion of the 12th man and Kyle Field, which has been a phenomenal home field advantage so far this season for them. But they hit the road and head to Fayetteville, which is just an unpredictable team right now. What you got for this one, Jay?
It's a dangerous game for A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas feels a little bit confident. They went to Tennessee and they came back, fell short at the end. But, Petrino is trying to get this job, right?
Yeah, he is.
So he knows he has to knock off at least 2 to 3 teams, notably in the SEC to get this job.
Right.
And A&M, like I said, they've had the luxury of home cooking. Now you go on the road and it's an early ball game.
Yeah.
That's dangerous
Hmm.
because you got to get up and get yourself ready. And Arkansas really hadn't been a team to feel like, oh, I got to get up and get ready for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, this could get tricky, but I still like A&M because of their defense.
Same. I just don't think Arkansas has this has been a long episode. I don't think Arkansas has put all the pieces together, and there's just been too much inconsistency to go up against an A&M team that just has so much momentum and so much going for them right now. It is interesting, though, that a 7.5 point odd is the same as Georgia Ole Miss, and that one seems way closer matched. Ole Miss and Georgia. This one is, I think this line itself from our friends at Fanduel is an indicator of how weird this one could be. It just feels like it's got those intangibles, those, hard to identify why it would be close, but it will kind of thing. So we'll see. Last one we're going to preview LSU heading to my stomping grounds, heading to Nash Vegas to take on Vanderbilt, who is favored over LSU 2.5 points. I think it's because, first of all, they're in Nashville. Second of all, Vandy is coming off a bye week, coming off the loss to Bama. The loss to Bama, as you just said, could be pointed toward one of Diego Pavia's worst games. You think that guy hasn't spent every day of the last 2 weeks thinking about that? Y'all, we know him at this point. We know how this kid works. I think that Diego Pavia is going to make it his mission to right the wrongs that he showcased in that Alabama game, and he's had 2 weeks to prepare for it. I think a fired up something to prove Diego Pavia is a problem for everyone, and I don't think that LSU has shown enough to give everyone confidence that they're about to come in and not look past Vanderbilt. I think that this offense is still not figuring it out. They are averaging just 19 points in their Power 4 games, and that's not up against Bama and Georgia. That's Florida and South Carolina. Where is your offense? I understand that Florida's defense is solid, but a really shaky Texas offense was able to do a little bit more. I just don't really get what's going on with LSU. I can't pinpoint it. Everyone wants to identify it as, well, Nussmeier's not really healthy, or the offensive line lost 4 veterans to the NFL. All true. But why are you not able to move the ball more than you are? It is a little bit interesting, and Vanderbilt's defense has been effective. And like I said, LSU had 2 turnovers inside the 5-yard line against South Carolina. Now, Vanderbilt's defense, their biggest struggle has been on passing third downs. So I do think that it's an area where LSU's offense and the passing attack could get going. I don't know if Aaron Anderson is going to be available. He's been injured and in and out, and I don't think he played this past weekend. But if he's able to go back, I think they could stay on the field and generate some drives, keep the ball away from Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt, and keep this one close. But people start getting real angry in Baton Rouge if LSU loses this one.
Well, the thing about Nussmeier, he's known to throw the ball into harm's way a couple of times.
Yeah.
And even last year, so people knows that. Yes, he has a good arm talent, but that doesn't make the decision making off your arm talent. If you know what I'm saying. Like, you still got to make the right decisions with the ball because you can't fit it in everywhere.
Yeah.
I'll say this about this game. If LSU loses this game, Brian Kelly would probably go coach somewhere else next year. Not because LSU is going to put a lot of pressure on him and force him out. He's going to want to get out of this.
Yeah.
And go somewhere
I just don't see the fit. I've been very vocal about it. I don't get it.
And Penn State could be one of those teams just because he's been up there that way, and it probably be a better fit for him.
I agree.
So this is a game for LSU, though. If they want to stay in contention, that they have to go on the road and beat a Vanderbilt team that's going to be playing very, very hard. But LSU defense, I think, can contain Pavia a little bit. He's going to make his plays.
Yeah.
But I like the LSU defense. I think Nussmeier, the performance they just had this past weekend, knowing they got away with one, I think they'll put it together better this weekend and still win this game.
I agree with you. I really just don't think we've seen anything from LSU that makes you go, yeah, they are that good. Clemson, Florida, South Carolina? No. They haven't proven it against anyone that we're really considering contenders at this point. So this is going to be a tougher test than it looks on paper. So I understand our friends at Fanduel favoring Vandy. Nashville is going to be hype. I mean, some Cajuns on Broadway. That is just a recipe for disaster. But
Gumbo and boots and cowboy hats all mixed together.
I love it. It'll be fun. Look, it's a jam-packed weekend of some good SEC ball. I envy those of you that can just camp out on the couch all weekend and watch these games, but we'll bring all the action to you next week. And look, we are about to really start figuring out who's got a real run at this thing because of weekends like this where you just got to knock each other out. That's your only way to the end. So it starts now. If it didn't already, here we go. So you want to keep it locked here on SEC State of Mind as we continue to bring you all the breaking news, action, hot takes in and around the best conference in sports. So please subscribe if you have not already. You can do that in the podcast app. You can also do that on YouTube, where we are bringing you video format every single Tuesday. Make sure you like, give a review, comment, interact with us, and share our episode with your friends on social media as we continue to grow the show. Once again, thank you to our partners at Fanduel for making this show possible. And Jay will be on the call, as always, with Auburn Sports Network this weekend on the call for Missouri Auburn. I will be on the call for Florida State at Stanford, which will be Saturday night on ESPN. So if you are flipping around, that'll be 9:30 Central Time because we're 7:30 Pacific. So I'll be on the call for that one. And we'll get to see our old friend Gus Malzahn, Auburn fans. He's the OC at Florida State. So I look forward to reconnecting with him. But a lot of action ahead. Everyone enjoy it this weekend. And until next Tuesday, we'll see you.
Peace.
Peace.